All right. Hi, welcome to the Partisan Podcast. My name is Eric. With us today, we have our first ever guest. Miss Teri Castillo is the DSA endorsed city council candidate for District 5 of San Antonio. Did I get all of that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I wanted to start just getting a brief overview of your background. You know, up to this point, what have you done with your life, and what sort of inspired you to run?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a lifelong and generational resident of San Antonio's District 5. District 5 is San Antonio's most economically poor district. And for generations, you know, my family and community members have been asking for meaningful change, right? From things that range from sidewalks to a livable wage. And, you know, it's just meaningful change is overdue. District 5 has the highest mortality rate of COVID deaths as well as COVID hospitalizations. So we know business as usual is failing and literally killing our community. So it's important that, you know, we have a representative who stands next to and represents working class values, and not necessarily a representative who speaks for community, but fights alongside community for what we've been asking for.
Okay. And like outside of like your run for office, what is your day job?
Yeah, I work in multiple sectors. I am a substitute teacher, like that's what I do for work. But a lot of my work is primarily in housing organizing. It's unpaid labor, but it's important to me. And that looks like challenging predatory land use and zoning initiatives, making sure that if tenant rights are being violated, that we meet with the authority necessary to address those issues. So I've kind of like have a wide range of things that I've been involved in. But at the same time, I'm a trained urban historian. Like academically, I have my master's in history with a focus in like urbanization, educational policy, and the intersections of race, labor, and all that interesting and infuriating stuff.
Okay, so in your intro, the sort of reason for running, you listed off a lot of things that sound like sort of the DSA party line. I see why they gave you the endorsement. That's awesome. We want to kind of get into like, what do you think are the top issues that are affecting San Antonians generally, and then also that the top issues affecting District 5. And I'm just going to let you kind of go off on those for however long you want. And then we're going to ask about solutions to those problems as well.
Okay, yeah, definitely. COVID recovery is number one. Again, you know, District 5 has been hit hard by COVID. The majority of the people who live in our neighborhood are, you know, service industry workers. And, you know, a lot of them do work in the medical field. And, you know, we're the frontline workers who have to continue to go to work during this pandemic. And a lot of folks did lose work because of it. We're just like for context, you know, like we are a tourist-based economy. So, you know, when COVID hit, all the restaurants closed, the Riverwalk was shut down, but things started opening up again and folks started going back to work, whether they worked in a hotel or at a restaurant. And, you know, they're coming in very close contact with people. I've spoke to a lot of folks in the neighborhood and some of my close friends who have gotten COVID while, you know, working valet at a hotel. Because, you know, of course, they're wearing the mask, but the guests aren't always appropriately masked up. So we need to make sure that we continue to have direct cash assistance for residents to ensure that they could stay housed during a pandemic. Because, you know, we're seeing an increase in evictions. And then for those who the system has already failed, now they're being pushed out from their encampments, which is just wrong. And that leads me to like the following priority, which is housing. San Antonio has a shortage of affordable housing, and you know, for-profit developers are using that as a way to build unaffordable luxury housing. So definitely ensuring that, you know, we're building housing that the existing residents of San Antonio and District 5 in particular can afford to live in, because what's being presented as affordable is not affordable to the existing San Antonio resident.
Yeah. I should have asked this earlier, but where geographically in San Antonio is District 5?
Yeah. District 5 is like the south and southwest side and west side of San Antonio.
Okay. Can you name some street names? Because like I'm in Houston now, but like I grew up going to San Antonio every weekend. So
yeah, like there's like Nogalitos, Flores, South Zamora, Castroville, Presa, Roosevelt, Quintana Road.
Okay, I think I'm familiar with Roosevelt. Maybe I don't remember. It's been a while.
Like, do you know where the downtown UTSA campus is?
Yeah.
Or an idea? Yeah, it's west of that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome.
And a slither of the south side.
Okay. So what sorts of housing assistance or like affordable housing projects and COVID relief projects would you be advocating for were District 5 to elect you to represent them?
Yeah, right now District 5 is leading in housing demolition moratoriums, and there are no wraparound services for homeowners who are issued notice, the demolition notice. And when they're issued the notice, they're also issued a notice to vacate. So the city has deemed their property inhabitable and a danger to the property owner and the neighbors. So they are issuing demolition notices. So a lot of people are losing their homes to these demolitions. And a lot of folks do not know that you could petition the demolition. You can also ask for an extension to have the demolition done. And you could also hire your own contractor to do the demo. What we're seeing is that the city isn't telling property owners about like, you know, these things that they can ask for. And residents are being left with a huge bill for the demolition. And if you don't pay the demolition bill, a lien is put on your home and the city could possibly take the home if that lien's not paid. So there's a multitude of pressures that are facing residents right now when it comes to housing, but the demolitions is one that's one that's very pressing because there are no plans for where these residents are going to go. And they're being issued demolitions because, you know, the house leveling needs to be leveled or there's roofing issues. And all those things are very expensive to fix. Costs that drastically exceed the average income of their household. So how can we invest more into homeowner or occupied programs to ensure that, hey, like if someone in our district needs to have their roof repaired, there's plenty of funding in this program that already exists to ensure that more people within the district can have access to the programs to rehab their homes and stay in their homes.
Okay. So my question is, who's ultimately responsible for the creation of those permits that are removing people from their homes?
Yeah,
the mayor's office, or is it some kind of other aspect within the city?
Yeah, it comes through the development and services department, but there's like levels to how it eventually leads to the demolition. It starts with like typically, well, let me backtrack and then I'll ground myself. There are people who do apply to have demolitions. And then what we're seeing though is that it starts with the code compliance violation for like say the grass being too tall, and then the code officer comes and they didn't cut the grass. And then they notice, you know, that, hey, there's a board on the window and that's a code violation. So there's another violation, and they just start adding up to where if the homeowner doesn't address them, it goes to the building and standards board. So then there's a board who has the judicial authority to demolish someone's home without council approval. So, you know, all these things are happening without the city council representative having to like have a say or ask questions before they're being demolished.
Can the city council reassert that authority?
Yeah, yeah, the city council member has authority of who they appoint to that board. So like when it comes to like the San Antonio board, that's something we need to look at because, for example, when we look at District 5, our board member is a real estate developer. So, you know, like it's kind of interesting that, you know, this person sits on this board and they're demolishing homes when they also, you know, do business within the district around housing.
You might say that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, definitely. You're much nicer than I am. I would name names, but that's okay.
Eric would be like, the person's name's this. If you elect me, I'm replacing them.
Yeah. what Bernie should have done with Joe Biden. He should have been way more aggressive with the campaign, but I digress. So I guess the question that we have, like, I think, like, based on chats that we've had in the past on our show and interactions we've had with chat, like our audience probably leans a bit further to the left and definitely is distrustful of electoralism as like a political strategy overall. How do you appeal to those people who, maybe they're young lefties who have whose only real exposure to politics has been just this complete abject failure of neoliberalism, like materially improve the lives of people. What is the appeal to those young people who have been disenfranchised by the electoral system at maybe like the state and national level that you would make to them in order to get them to come out and vote?
Yeah, definitely. Electoralism isn't the end all be all, and one representative isn't going to address all the issues. I'm a firm believer in coalition building and organizing in and outside of council. Like my background is like community organizing and housing, and it's not going to stop, because what it takes is building people power to continue to show up to city council and continue to show up to board meetings to hold people accountable. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to, is community coming together, demanding accountability, demanding change. And, when that accountability is not met, we organize an action. And then, following is typically the change that we've been asking for the whole time. But again, too, right, when it comes to electoralism, like these people, like city council representatives have the authority to put people on boards. And like we just finished talking about the Building and Standards Board, that's a lot of power for someone who wasn't elected, to have the authority to have someone's home, their property knocked down. So I think, definitely electoralism is not an end all be all, but we gotta find, like, we gotta be in there, because the system's working exactly as they want to, like that it's intended to. And we need to infiltrate it if we really want meaningful change for our working poor families and our working class families.
I think a good example is accountability, like, because the local police department is ultimately answerable to city council, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, city council has authority over the budget, and then they participate in the union contract discussion.
Okay, awesome. What are your stance on the sort of like the broader like police protesting that went on over the summer? What is your position to those to those sorts of movements? Is your like policy position more on the like strong accountability and standards side, anti-bias training? Is it budget reductions? And if so, like, just kind of what is your vision for like what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. When talking to folks within the community, there's a huge need, right, for streetlights, community services, youth programs. These needs. So we need to look at where is the funding and where is it useful. And I definitely believe that the budget needs to reflect what community wants. And there was recently a survey, an essay, it's slipping my mind. There was a city survey for pretty much District 5 residents, prioritized community services, youth services, and housing as their top budget priorities. So we need to be sure that the budget reflects what community is saying that we need and where they prefer their money, because it's public money, to go. And I think it's important to talk about, police accountability. SAPD's police chief, he's a proponent of the reform of chapter 147, I believe, or 143. And essentially it's, if a police officer is reporting a partner for bad behavior, it has to be addressed within so many days. And the person making the report, their name is hidden. So that way they don't face retaliation from their partner. And, if the police chief is saying that, if he fires a police officer for feeding a homeless man a feces sandwich, which happened in San Antonio, that, he should not have his job back. So I believe that, we need to listen to the police chief who's saying, like, if I fire someone for doing these like things, we need to keep them off the streets.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a follow-up question on that. I know in Houston we have this weird amalgamation of county, state, and city police all having jurisdictions in the same locations. Is that an issue that's going on in San Antonio with police forces hiring and firing within one another?
Yes, that's definitely something that one of the fixed SAPDs proposing is that if a police officer has gotten in trouble with a different department, that it will still be on their record. Because to my knowledge, it erases after 2 years. If they've done something like some type of bad behavior, it erases from their record as it stands now. So the proposed solutions and resolutions from the Fixed SAPD Coalition, they're proposing that, if something's on someone's record, it has to stick. So that way the next department who's looking to hire will be able to see their history.
You mentioned that, like, when you were talking about organizing, you were talking about organizing in a very horizontal, community-focused way. Do you, if elected, would you have any sense of or any desire to organize more vertically with broader movements at the state and federal level, to a lesser degree, obviously, as well? Or would you kind of just like focus on the District 5 issues?
I think it's necessary, right, to reach out to broader folks working on left issues because, for example, District 5 makes up 32% of San Antonio's public housing stock. And there was discussion to demolish that public housing and replace it with mixed income, right? And there's no plan of where the public housing residents were going to move to. So I'm a strong proponent of the Green New Deal for public housing, right? Because it's environmentally just, it's social just, and it decommodifies like housing that everyone should have access to. So when we're having these discussions, because it's something that's ongoing that we're having around public housing, is that where can we look for a model? Who's doing the work, who's retrofitted their public housing, and how can we follow? So it's important to have that wide national network of who's doing what and how can we work together? How can we learn? What's your advice on how we could ensure that we preserve our affordable housing in District 5? But that's going to take a discussion with someone in a different city, in a different state.
Okay. Let's see. We talked to more moderate Democrats who were maybe turned off by Bernie Sanders in the 2020 run. Someone who maybe was more of a Pete Buttigieg or an Amy Klobuchar supporter on the federal level. What's your pitch to those people?
Well,
her pitch to me was her face she made when you said Pete Buttigieg.
Exactly. We already love it.
Well, I'm proud to say that Bernie Sanders won Bexar County, so he did really well here. So hopefully that reflects, where people stand. And I think the majority of people who live in District 5, we're Bernie Sanders supporters. I did a lot of canvassing during the Bernie Sanders election within the district, and people were tired and ready for meaningful change and, to have their working class issues prioritized over luxury development and all this ongoing discussion that's going around housing that's unaffordable to the existing residents. And there's, questions around why are these multi-million-dollar for-profit out-of-state developers getting tax exemptions for up to 80 to 100 years when, my property taxes are going up. So definitely within District 5, and San Antonio, Bexar County, it went to Bernie. So
okay, so you're not strategically worried about winning like moderate vote.
After going canvassing, the majority of folks are are ready for meaningful change.
Good. Well, that'll wipe my last question, where I was going to ask how you're going to appeal to conservatives. Well, no, I guess this is reasonable. So I assume that like District 5 has a large Latino population, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's pretty diverse, but majority Latino, yes.
Right. So this last year, the margins that Donald Trump enjoyed among like the Black and Latino community, particularly among male members of those populations, he did grow his margins in those. So let's say hypothetically you're canvassing and you come across a Trump supporter. What's the pitch that you make to them, or are you kind of just relying on the raw numbers to turn out your vote?
Yeah, I've had conversations with Trump supporters within the district, and we come together around the fact that, our public money should be used for public good and not used for the profit of, developers or to line the pockets of, big business. So it's not as challenging as, I had imagined or, folks would, but definitely there's the conversation of like, we've been waiting for this change and we continue to elect like these quote unquote progressives and nothing changes, and there's just an erosion in the political process, which I totally understand because, it has been business as usual and people putting their own interests above community. So definitely just having the conversations around where our money is actually going and where it should be going, because we know that, again, being the most economically poor district who's now seeing economic development, but it's not meant for us. It's not meant for the existing residents who have lived here. It's meant to allure new neighbors who are, earn far more than us. And then, it's not, we're not gonna have access to these new spaces being built. So just having a conversation around like, hey, like our money needs to work and benefit the public.
Yeah, that definitely corresponds with my read for like Trump's success is really like the economic populism that he ran on early. And I think a lot of his decline can be explained by sort of the shift in focus to normal business as usual Republican politics. So do we have questions from chat, Nick? No, they're not asking anything.
They're being quiet for once. When you actually want them to talk, they're like, "Oh, we're shy today."
At least someone's like trolling me in the chat, like.
But to be fair, though, it wouldn't be the trolls that you're used to, right? Like they would be like, "Electoralism doesn't work. This is nonsense," right? They wouldn't be the other side of it. So
put shoe on head or like yeah.
Okay. So Nick and I like books a lot. So the next question is just like, what are you reading right now? And what has been like one of the most impactful books you've read recently?
Oh, that's a really good one. Capital City by Samuel Stein. It's on real estate development. And just, what I appreciate about that book is that it highlights how Donald Trump was a real estate developer and how, that's how he built his wealth. And within San Antonio, there's like a lot of, I don't want to say like sympathy, but the way our current council phrases development is like, oh, it's a gift to these very like economically deprived cities, parts of town. And it's like, no, these are tax shelters for these billionaires, to extract labor and profit, not necessarily to produce or provide for the existing residents. So Samuel Stein's book, Capital City, is like really good. I recommend it.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing and what you're not saying is that there's a lot of attempts at gentrification happening in District 5?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's District 5 has multiple pressures on community right now. There's the expansion of the University of Texas at San Antonio's downtown campus. There's this beautification project, a linear creekway that's like gorgeous, but it's a hot area now. People want to buy homes near the creek. And it's close to downtown. It's a gorgeous part of town, like District 5, beautiful murals, beautiful architecture. Like you know, I love living here. And we're extremely vulnerable to displacement, and we're super close to the tax reinvestment zones, another Trump policy and tax shelter. So we're very vulnerable to displacement.
It's slightly ironic, I would think, that the idea of the people and the places and the reasons why the area is beautiful and why the murals exist and why that sort of artistic culture exists in that even portion of the area are the people that they're trying to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I'm running, because we need to ensure that the people who are the cultural fabric and make this community what it is can continue to live here and continue to work here if they want, right? Because we have a right, we should have a right to say in like the policymaking process around development and housing, but we don't, you know. There's like these fake public participatory discussions where it's meant for our electeds and planners to check off the box to say that they met with us, but then it's business as usual and they continue with whatever plan they had. And, you know, it's not working for us, and we need to change that and ensure that community is part of the policymaking process, and it's in the actual policy.
Yeah. If you're not in the conversation, you'll be left out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we get any last minute questions from chat? Because I have exhausted the questions that I came with.
You've exhausted your questions?
Well, I was under the impression we had Teri for 20 to 25 minutes.
Well, that's how long we've had Teri, so.
Okay. So perfect timing, I guess.
Awesome.
If you want to stick around for the regular show and you know, do that, you can, but that will be much sillier.
Okay. Well, I have to get running in like 15 minutes. But
okay. We were super honored to have you as our first ever guest. We'll know this in like 10 years. We'll have a super popular podcast. We'll bring you back on and you'll be like, you know, running for, you know, the House or the Senate. Who knows?
Awesome. Like, thanks for having me. Oh, this was a lot of fun.
Okay, well, we like having you, and if you want to stick around, you're welcome to. But if not, you're also like free to leave. We're not going to hold you.
Yeah, I'd like to hang for a bit. And is it okay if I just drop off?
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Right, and I'll mute my mic. Should I turn off my camera too? Or
no, you're good. You can just hang out like here, and if you have a thought, you can pitch in, because we just sit and talk to each other. We don't script anything. We don't really have segments or anything like that. We kind of just have a rough list of topics we talk about, and then we run through them. And typically, it gets very tangential. Like we spent one whole episode on aliens, and
hey, don't talk about my aliens like that, all right? No, but I actually do want to get her take on the first segment. So let's end this one real quick, and then I'll restart it. Because I want to ask her what she thinks about GameStop.
Okay.